Привет! Today we're going to cover the question that becomes a point of confusion for many beginner students. Is there any difference between the verbs учить, учиться, изучать, and заниматься? And if so, then what is it? Let's start with the verbs учить and учиться. And here's the catch. The verb учить has two meanings in Russian. It means both to learn and to teach. So, how do you know what exactly it means in a particular phrase? You know it from the context. If there is a subject after this verb, then it means to learn. For instance, я учу русский язык. I'm learning Russian. Я учу английский язык. I'm learning English. Я учу новые слова. Я учу новые правила. Я учу математику. Я учу таблицу умножения. And so on. And if there is an object after the verb учить, a person or an animal, someone, then it will mean to teach. For example, я учу сестру читать. I'm teaching my sister, and then, in addition, how to read. Я учу детей играть на гитаре. I teach kids to play the guitar. Я учу собаку сидеть. I'm training my dog to sit. An important part is that there must be a subject or an object following this verb. You can't just say я учу, period. A person would ask, learning what? Or teaching who? So once again, you have to use a subject or an object after this verb. A noun, speaking in terms of grammar. And you cannot put a verb after it, even if you're trying to say that you're learning how to do something. And if you do, it will still mean that you're teaching someone. Look at these phrases once again. You can say я учу сестру читать. I'm teaching my sister how to read. And even if you say я учу читать, it will still mean that you teach someone, people in general, how to read. Учить always means either learning something or teaching someone, never learning how to do something. A subject or an object should follow the verb учить, or they will be implied. And if you want to say, for instance, I'm learning how to draw, I'm learning to play the guitar, I'm learning dancing. Now, for this, you will be using the verb учиться. This little part at the end, ся, means oneself. And the verb учиться actually means to teach oneself. So you're basically saying in Russian, I'm teaching myself to draw. I'm teaching myself to play the guitar. I'm teaching myself to dance, which also means I'm learning to dance. It comes from the phrase «я учу себя». The part «себя» got reduced over time and turned into just a short «ся». And that's how we got the verb учиться. You may feel a little puzzled about the way you conjugate this verb, but please, don't be. In general, the verb учиться follows the same conjugation as the verb учить. Check it out. When a form of this verb would end with a consonant, you would add a ся. And when a form of this verb would end with a vowel, then a little ся will get even shorter and turn into a сь. Compare, please. So you can say «Я учусь рисовать». I'm teaching myself how to draw. Or simply I'm learning to draw. Я учусь играть на гитаре. Я учусь танцевать. Я учусь петь. Я учусь читать и писать по-русски. Я учусь водить машину. And so on. In all these examples, we use the verb учиться to say that we're learning to do something. And it has another, slightly different meaning. Without any infinitive following it, it will mean to study. For example, я учусь, I study. Я хорошо учусь, I have good grades. Or literally, I study well. Где ты учишься? Я учусь в университете. Я учусь в школе. Я учусь на факультете экономики и финансов. Ты работаешь или учишься? Я еще учусь. Я студент. Or я студентка. Я учусь в России, в Москве. Я здесь учусь. And so on. The point is that you've kind of already added an object after this verb. You are saying, I'm teaching myself. So you can't add another object or subject after it. But you can add an infinitive, to do something, or a description, where or how. So, after the verb учить, you have to put a subject or an object. And after the verb учиться, you can put a verb in the infinitive form. To read, to write, to draw, and so on. And also, unlike with the verb учить, you can just say «Я учусь», period. And it will mean «I study». The verbs that end with a ся in Russian are called reflexive verbs. I've already said that ся means self. To compare in Spanish, French, or Italian, it's a particle se or si. Reflexive verbs indicate that an action is directed on oneself. And also, I'd like to remind you that in Russian, you never read such endings the way they're spelled. You always read them as ца. Why? Because the sounds t and s together make the sound ц. ц. And ц can't be soft in Russian. So such endings will be always pronounced as ца. And a little side note, if you're a teacher and you want to say that you, for example, teach English in Russia, or you teach maths or music or something else, it's better to use the verb преподавать instead of учить. You can say «Я преподаю английский язык в России». «Я преподаю математику». «Я преподаю музыку», and so on. Now, as we broke down the verbs учить and учиться, let's compare them to the verbs изучать and заниматься. Изучать means to study something. And you have to add a subject after it, what you're studying. We could say that the verb учить, in a sense of learning something, has a tint of rather memorizing the existing material than exploring new ways in a subject. And the verb изучать, on the opposite, means studying something with a deep interest professionally, exploring a subject. For example, you can say «Я изучаю психологию». «Я изучаю медицину. Я изучаю программирование. Я изучаю кино. Я изучаю искусство. Я изучаю политику. Я изучаю финансы. You could also say я изучаю языки or я изучаю русский язык. But be aware that it will mean that you are rather a scientist, a linguist who is studying the history and nature of the Russian language. It's most probably your profession. And if you're just learning Russian as a foreign language, to be fluent and to be able to speak it, you'll say «Я учу русский». And at last, the verb заниматься. First of all, look at the way it ends. What can you say about it? Right, it's also a reflexive verb. It shows that an action is directed towards oneself. Don't forget that we always read such endings as right, ца, заниматься. If we remove this particle, we will get the verb занимать. One of its meanings is to occupy something. So, заниматься will mean to occupy oneself with something, to be involved in some activity, or also to practice something with an intent to become better at it, to be into something, to be interested in it. Remember the phrase «Чем ты занимаешься?» It either means what's your occupation in life in general, or what are you doing right now? What are you busy with? And depending on the context, you're supposed to either tell the person your profession, я врач, я музыкант, я занимаюсь созданием сайтов и приложений. Or you can tell them what you're doing right now. Я сейчас на работе. Я завтракаю. Я отдыхаю. And so on. Look at the way you conjugate this verb. There is nothing tricky about it. Without the reflexive particle ся, you conjugate it the same way as the verb слушать, or as any verb that ends with ать. And then you add a ся or сь, depending on whether the form ends with a consonant or a vowel. It's the same idea that we covered earlier in this video. You can also use this verb to say that you're into sports, whether you're a professional or an amateur. Я занимаюсь спортом. I practice sports. Я занимаюсь борьбой. I practice wrestling. Я занимаюсь танцами. Я занимаюсь плаванием. If you're already familiar with cases, tell me what case you're supposed to use with this verb. So, with these phrases, you're basically saying that you're into some kind of sports. You're practicing it with an intent to become better at it. This verb includes a big learning component, and this is the reason why some students may confuse the verb заниматься with the verb учиться. But again, you have to use a verb after учиться, and you have to use a noun after заниматься. You can say «Я занимаюсь русским», «Я занимаюсь музыкой», «Я занимаюсь математикой». With this, you're saying that you're practicing something and trying to perfect some skill. And if you just say «Я занимаюсь», period, you're implying that a person already knows what you're practicing. Maybe you're busy with your studies right now or with your homework. You can also use this verb in the following collocations. Я занимаюсь бизнесом. Я занимаюсь любимым делом. Or ты занимаешься ерундой. Remember how you say I'm busy or I'm occupied with something? We've learned these phrases just recently. Я занят, or я занята, or здесь занято. It's occupied here. Can you see how these words sound very similar to the verb заниматься? It's because they have the same roots. And заниматься also means to be busy or occupied with something, as well as to take care of something, to work on making it better. You can say я занимаюсь сайтом. I'm working on my site. Я занимаюсь домом. I'm working on my house, making it look better. Я занимаюсь ребенком. I'm taking care of my child. I hope I gave you an idea about the difference between the verbs учить, учиться, изучать, and заниматься. Give me some examples of how you would use these phrases in a comment below. До встречи через неделю. See you in a week. And here is once again a quick summary for you.